Hey everybody, Riley and I are here to read you chapter 7 of Lily's story. So, yesterday we read about how Maggie Rose was given a journal from her brother who had been teasing her. Oh my goodness, can you chill? For quite some time. And today we're going to find out if she ends up writing in it, and if so, if your predictions in the Google Classroom were correct. So, here we go with chapter 7. You ready for it? I know you liked it yesterday. Kept talking about treats. Look at that power. I know. Look at the kids. Hey, look at them. Look at them. Look at them. Okay, here we go. Chapter 7. Apparently, we were done with the ball because we went back inside, leaving the toy forgotten in the yard. It would be there, though, next time we walked through the door. Brian went off in another direction, but I stayed with Maggie Rose, who took me down the rows of kennels. Oscar meowed at us, and Maggie Rose stopped to greet him, and then she opened the door to Brewster's pen. Brewster roused himself from his slumber and blinked up at us, wagging his tail in a way that I knew meant he didn't want to get out of bed unless a person made him. All right, Lily, go sit by Brewster. I want to draw a picture of you. I'm going to call it Lily Ann Brewster, okay? I looked at her expectantly. Clearly, something wonderful was about to happen. Or not. Maggie Rose picked me up and carried me over to Brewster. We sniffed each other. Neither one of us had any idea what Maggie Rose wanted us to do. All right, good dog. Stay, Lily, stay. I looked at Brewster. He looked at me, and sighing, he put his head down. I looked at Maggie Rose. Now what? She was bent over that thing that Brian had handed her out in the yard. She had a stick in her hand and was making faint scratching sounds with it. I yawned. The thing about Brewster was that his naps were like a leash pulling me into the same deep sleep. I couldn't keep my eyes open, and soon I was sprawled out next to him. He put his hand on my chest, just like my mother dog. Can I read? Can I read? Thank you. I opened my eyes when Maggie Rose stirred, but Brewster didn't. I wiggled out from under Brewster's head, and he didn't even notice. I bowed and stretched to get rid of the sleepy feeling in my legs, watching my girl for a sign about what we were going to do next. Want to see the picture I drew? My girl asked me. No, stop it. She held out the dry, flat thing that Brian handed to her, and I sniffed at it politely. Want to know what else I did? I wrote a wish, Lily, Maggie Rose said. I sat and scratched at my ear with a rear paw. My wish is about you, Lily. I wrote down that I want you to be my dog forever. I wrote that I hope that every day when I go to school, you'll come here to be with Mom and Amelia. And when I get home, I'll come straight here to the rescue and I'll clean out the cat cages and fold the towels and do all the work that I always do. But you'll be right here with me. And when I go home, you'll go home with me. You'll sleep on my bed. You're my dog, Lily, mine, and nobody else's. I wagged because there was something so happy and hopeful in her voice. I couldn't hear it and feel it. I could hear it and feel it. You know what else, Lily? Brian isn't so mean after all, Maggie Rose told me. Several days later, we were back to playing the game with the ball where my girl would throw it and yell, bring it back, and then run after me. I loved that game. I just got my teeth on the ball for the 10th time when the back door opened and Maggie Rose looked up. Hi, Dad. How's my game warden girl today? Dad replied as he came up to us. He was smiling. I wagged at Dad. Was he going to play Bring It Here? 2 people chasing me with the ball would be even better than 1. I'm teaching Lily to retrieve, but she doesn't understand, my girl replied. I wagged at her because she said my name. Well, I don't want to interrupt your dog training, but I thought you might like to go with me to do something very important, Dad said. Can I bring Lily? Maggie Rose asked eagerly. Dad nodded. I knew you'd want to. I already asked your mom and she said yes. Just like that, we were done playing. Now, as far as I was concerned, there could hardly be any activity more interesting than a game with a ball. Even so, I eagerly trotted after my girl and Dad as they left the yard. Anything with people is better than anything with just a dog, or even a dog and a ball. When the leash clicked into my collar, Maggie Rose offered me a treat. Life was great. This time, she pushed me through the different door to go to a new outside, another yard with a vehicle parked in it. The thing smelled strongly of other places and other things, and I began sniffing it eagerly. Hop in the truck, Maggie Rose. Dad said as he opened the back door. My girl climbed into the thing called a truck, patting her legs. Come, Lily. I jumped in, wagging, and Maggie Rose uncinched my collar. No treat for that. But sometime soon she might reattach it, and I would get something then. Dad closed the door, and I watched, excited, as he went through the front of the truck and opened his door and slid in. We had the entire back seat to ourselves. When do I get to sit up front with you, Dad? Maggie Rose asked. When you're a little older, honey. Right now, you'd be in danger if the airbag went off. When I'm bigger, you mean? Maggie Rose corrected softly. A tinge of sadness mingled in her words. You'll hit a growth spurt soon, I promise. Look at Craig. He shot up a foot since we moved here. I jumped down off my girl's lap and settled below her feet. Dad shut the door with a slam, but that didn't bother me. When the floor began to shake and bounce, that didn't bother me either. I was with my girl and Dad, and coming from the far back of the truck was an animal smell that I recognized. Another animal was in here with us, and I'm pretty sure I knew who it was. Why do you call this truck Dad? Maggie Rose asked. Craig says it's an SUV. Why do you call this a truck, Dad? Maggie Rose asked. Craig says it's an SUV. Dad chuckled. Right. I guess technically Craig is correct, but to me, it's a truck. Remember that sports car that I had back in Michigan? This big old Expedition is far from a Corvette, as you can get. So I'll call it a truck. Maggie Rose was quiet for a little while. Do you miss Michigan? She asked hesitantly. Not at all, Dad replied. I'm used to going to an office and stare up at a computer screen all day, but now I get to drive up into the mountains and help animals. Your mom is happy too. After working in that huge hospital for 10 years, she gets to do something that she's passionate about. The rescue was failing when they put her in charge, and now it's got enough money to keep going, and the volunteers are organized. Why do you miss where we used to live, Maggie Rose? No, I like helping animals too. That's my game warden girl. Brian wishes we would move back though, Dad sighed. I know. He's still having some trouble adjusting. Maybe our family needs a dog, Maggie Rose suggested. I wagged a little at the word dog. Oh, did Brian say he wants a dog? Dad asked. If he did, could we have one? My girl countered. Dad was quiet for a moment. What are you getting at, Maggie Rose? Lily's the best dog, my girl said in a rush. She would help Brian feel better about living here in Colorado, and me. She would help me feel better, and then I would get straight A's and would do all my chores, and I would walk her and clean up after her and feed her. Please, Dad, can I keep Lily? Oh, Dad responded slowly. Now I get it. Have you already spoken to your mother about this? Maggie Rose was silent. Honey, what did your mom say? She said maybe not. Maggie Rose mumbled. Okay, well, I think we'd better do what your mom says, Dad replied cheerfully. Right? She's the one who's the expert in animal rescue. Maggie Rose looked out the window. That sadness was back in her. I sat up and gave her leg a lick to remind her that with the puppy lying under her shoes, there's no reason to be unhappy. But she didn't look down at me, and her mood did not improve. For a long time, no one said anything. Where are we going today, Dad? Maggie Rose asked finally. Your mom cut the cast off that squirrel this morning, and the squirrel looks fully recovered. So we're letting her loose, Dad answered. Come here, Ray. Stop crying. Sammy? Sammy's a girl? I was right. Sammy was the name of the animal that I could smell in the back. She was a squirrel. Sammy, is that her name? Dad replied with a small laugh. My girl was quiet for a moment. Samantha, she declared. Sammy is short for Samantha. The motion of the truck vibrated through my body, making me a little sleepy. I yawned. Samantha, Dad agreed. Are you letting her loose in the park? Maggie Rose asked. Well, no. Samantha's an American red squirrel, and they're territorial. I've been scouting around, and I found a stand of pine trees near an old storage shed. Come here. That doesn't have any squirrels living there. So Sammy won't have any friends to play with? Maggie Rose asked. She sounded a little worried. Like Brian? No, but that's okay. Territorial means that other squirrels wouldn't want her moving into their neighborhood, and they would fight with her. When she's ready to have babies, she'll be very popular with boy squirrels, I promise. My eyes kept blinking shut. Every time it seemed when the trucks lurched in a stop. Oh, I'm sorry. It seemed harder to open them, so I just gave up. I jerked awake, when the truck lurched to a stop. Maggie Rose clicked a leash into my collar. Treat. She and I slipped out onto the grassy ground, and I shook and then squatted, looking up expectantly at my girl when I was done. Treat. When I was done with the second treat and I realized my girl wasn't going to give me another one, I examined my surroundings. I was amazed. This yard was bigger than any yard that I've ever imagined. I smelled clean air and dust, and farther away, an animal or two that I'd never met. The fence, whatever it was so far away that I couldn't even see it. Outside was not only fun, it was huge. If my girl threw the ball here, there was nothing to stop it from bouncing forever. Well, nothing except a good dog who would catch it and run away from her. Dad raised the back of his truck and pulled out a cage, and the smell of Sammy instantly filled my nose. A moment later, I saw the squirrel clinging to the wires in the bottom of the cage as Dad shut the back of the truck. My girl and I followed Dad, who walked towards some trees carrying the cage with him. When we got to the trees, I could see dry sticks all over the ground, and then an odd, sharp smell. The same smell drifted down from the branches overhead. Sticks are some of my favorite objects because any one of them can instantly become a toy, especially if Maggie Rose is holding it on the other end. But these sticks smelled so strongly that I knew they'd leave a real tang on my tongue if I chewed one. I decided to ignore them. It was hard, but I could do it. See how the reddish color of the pine needles matches the tint in Sammy's fur? Dad asked, setting the cage down on the ground. Sammy and I stared at each other, and I wondered if she would be interested and chase me. Good camouflage. So they always live in pine trees? Maggie Rose asked. The species does. They mostly eat seeds from pine cones. Have you ever seen a pile of old pine cones under a log or in a hollow by a stone? Red squirrels make those piles to store food for the winter. They're called middens. Middens, Maggie Rose repeated. Squirrels do a lot for the ecosystem. When they gather nuts, they always forget where they put some of them, and nuts are seeds. In the spring, some of them sprout and become new seedlings. A forest with squirrels is a healthy forest, Dad said. Sammy wasn't moving much, just standing nearly frozen inside the cage, and every so often she shook her tail a little. That tail looked like it would be a lot more fun than a stick. I didn't know what we were doing, but it was fun. Anyways, plus, for the moment, Maggie Rose seemed to have forgotten about being sad. I didn't believe for a moment that being with a squirrel was what was making her happy. It must be me. I must be doing something right. Or maybe it was just being out in such a big yard that cheered Maggie Rose up. It certainly made me happy. Near the trees was an old building with no doors, just walls and a sagging roof. I hoped we were not going to live in there. The house had a big yard, but I could not imagine my mother and my girl and my dad and everyone else would fit along with me in such a small place. Do you notice something you don't see? Dad asked. Don't see, Maggie Rose repeated. She was silent for a moment. Middens? Exactly, Dad beamed. Very good, Maggie Rose. That's one of the ways that I figured out that no other squirrels had declared this as their territory. No middens. I hope Sammy will be happy here, Maggie Rose said. Well, there's only way to find out. Hold on to Lily, Dad advised. I felt a twist on my collar as Maggie Rose tightened the leash, and I wagged at the sudden attention. And then I tensed as Dad knelt by the cage and began rattling it. Pretty soon, I was going to get to play with a squirrel. Sammy retreated from Dad, her fluffy tail twitching. I watched with excitement as the cage door swung open. Yes! Time for Chase Me! I wagged furiously. Dad stood up and stepped back. Okay, Samantha, he said. Go on, Sammy, Maggie Rose encouraged. All right, go ahead and in the comments of our Google Classroom post, tell me what do you think is going to happen when they open the cage? What do you think Samantha is going to do? Tune in tomorrow to find out.